This last March, I was really lucky. I received a really generous professional development grant from Williston and was able to travel to Israel and the West Bank for 2 weeks. My focus was math, ultimate, and origami. By the numbers, I spent March 5th through the 27th on the ground. I visited 6 schools. One was a school to learn about an origami program. There were 2 Arab high schools in the north of Israel in Tamra, 1 Jewish high school outside of Tel Aviv in the city called Renana. I went to a Greek Catholic school in Beit Zahor, which is in the West Bank, close to Bethlehem, and I went to a Quaker high school in Ramallah in the West Bank. I participated in 5 ultimate events. 4 of them were practices for the Ultimate Peace Organization, and one of them I helped run a coaching clinic where we were training coaches in Israel. I had been to the region before and traveled all over the place, but I did get to 3 new regions. One was Tamra, the Arab city in the north of Israel. The second place was the Dead Sea, and the third place was Hebron, the largest city in the West Bank down in the south. This is the region I went to. There's an infinity to learn about the region, and one key thing to realize was kind of summed up by a friend of mine who called the region what you would get if you took every little bit, every little piece of the United States and then crammed it into New Jersey. Now, New Jersey is a hard enough place to live in to begin with. Put a little bit of everything there, and that's the size and concentration of what you have in Israel and the West Bank. So why? Why did I go? What was the point? Overall, the point was I live my life to collect stories, and I have found no place more interesting than Israel and the West Bank to collect stories. Here are a few of them. First of all, origami is everywhere. I learned it when I was folding as a young 5-year-old in Western Massachusetts. I had friends that told me about where they learned it in Japan and all over the United States. But it turns out origami is everywhere. I found the Israeli Origami Association, which I wasn't sure how large it was, contacted their director, this very wonderful woman named Miri, and ended up staying with she and her husband for 2 days, their young son. It turned out not only did she run the Israeli Origami Association, she'd been folding origami in various programs for 20 years, told me stories about meeting the Pope and the Dalai Lama. In addition, it turned out her husband is the world authority on industrial paper design and art in paper design. So it was kind of like stumbling into one of the most gloriously entertaining situations I've ever been in. One of the many things that I learned was, did you know you could take a square piece of paper and with 2 folds exactly trisect a side? And for those of you that work with constructions and geometry, you know that dividing anything into 3 is really, really hard to do, but it turns out with just 2 folds, you can divide any side of a square into 3 perfect segments. Ask any of my students, they'll be glad to teach you how to do that. Second, everyone should visit the Middle East. One of my favorite spots, no, not one of my favorite spot in the world is the roof of this place called the Austrian Hospice in the old city of Jerusalem. It's in the north end near the Damascus Gate. The whole city kind of slopes down toward the Temple Mount. So over the Damascus Gate, it's up high, and on top of that roof, it's this building that has been run by the Austrians for a long time, and anybody can go up to the roof, and I randomly stumbled across it based on a little note that I saw on a note card that a friend passed me that said, just go to the roof of the Austrian Hospice. I didn't know what it was, but we were randomly stumbling through the old city 2 years ago and found it, went up to the roof, and what you get is this perfect 360-degree view of the old city. And I look for a few reasons. 1, the view is unbelievable. 2, the sound is incredibly textured. You get church bells, you get call to prayer, you get the sounds of the city, you can hear people. And 3rd, everybody comes up there at some point in their trip to Jerusalem. They find it eventually, maybe it's not the first place they go. It's right near the Via Dolorosa. A lot of the stations that cross it there, so you see a lot of Christian pilgrims, but everybody makes it up there. So I've met missionary groups from Texas, I've met Eastern Europeans, I've met local Israelis. I've met everybody out there. I've met the most diverse group of people in that spot that I've ever met anywhere, and it's the shining kind of example of a place that really proves the Middle East is for everybody, regardless of belief or background. Second thing is teenagers are teenagers no matter where you go, no matter what you do. I've been fortunate enough to interact with teenagers all across the globe. One of the groups that I met with was at the school called Al-Bayan in Tamra. These are 4 students from Ultimate Peace, and what I found in their high school, which in many ways is very different than here, is almost identical. They were all kind of furtively hiding their cell phone use and talking about the same topics after we translated and filtered to me. They did have bells. One of the more surreal moments was when I heard the bells go off, and it was kind of this ringtone that was actually Old Clementine. So I kind of felt like I needed to find the ice cream truck, but they all need to get up and move to the next class. So teenagers are teenagers no matter where you go. Third, I know relatively nothing. It sounds strange to say this, but one of my goals, and it has come true every time I've traveled to the region, is I've learned an incredible amount, but I've walked away more confused than I came in. For example, one of my big goals for this trip was to make it down to Hebron, which is in the southern center of the West Bank. It's the largest city in the West Bank. And I read enough about it to know it was a different type of place. It's not really a tourist city. It's big, it's crazy, it's a scrum of activity, and it really was from the literal second I got off of the little taxi van, a chaotic environment. And I knew I wanted to make it down to a mosque and temple in the old city that I had read about, and I wasn't quite sure if I was going to be able to get there. It's on the border of H1 and H2, which are the Arab and Jewish regions of Hebron. So I just kept walking, went down to the old city, which is this covered, well, the old city is really just an alley, a covered alleyway. Went through the security checkpoint. They asked me, where are you from? I say America. Just wave me through. And I get through it, it's this empty space. It was strange because I knew it was considered to be the second holiest site in all of Judaism, and an incredibly holy site in the Islamic faith. Kind of just break left and I see a door. One thing I've learned while traveling is that, through the Middle East, is that people are really quick to tell you if you're not supposed to go into a place. So all you really have to do is make any sort of motion to enter, and someone will say, no. Well, no one said no, so I just kept walking, and I ended up with this great free tour of the Abraham Mosque. And I knew a little bit about what I was walking into, so I get this great tour, and I see the thing on the left. Then I walk out, go around to the other side, put on my yarmulke, and walk into the temple. And end up doing the same thing from the other side. What the temple and mosque are known for, it's the same building partitioned down the middle. What you're looking at is the tomb marker for Sarah. And you're looking at the exact same object from two different sides through the exact same color grate. It is the most perfect allegory I have ever found to the space and place that I was visiting. It's the exact same object viewed by two different populations in the exact same space. Anybody can change their mind. When I visited, I also visited this family in Bethlehem. I met them because I coached Hamuda, who's in the upper left there in the black t-shirt. He went to Hotchkiss, and I coached him on a Youth Club Ultimate team. And he participated in Ultimate Peace, and many of his family members now participate as camp members. And he's one of the active leaders. He lives at Hobart now. Those are his parents right below, Sawad and Kamel. Kamel's been in Bethlehem for a very long time. They live in the Aza refugee camp, which is the smallest of the 3 refugee camps in Bethlehem. And he's really interested in starting an Ultimate Peace kind of suborbital camp in Bethlehem. And what's so fascinating is that they're fervently behind Ultimate Peace and help build it, which is a camp that runs in Israel. Yet, Hamuda's older brother, when Hamuda was originally approached to join, Hamuda's going to Hotchkiss. At the time, his brother was in an Israeli jail for 2 years. And changed his mind and said, I am going to try this out. And now Hamuda and his entire family are 100% behind Ultimate Peace. So anybody can change their mind. Last, nothing is impossible. In the late 19th century, a group of Quakers went to Ramallah. And as a side note, if you really want to read about an interesting group of people who are pretty much the most hardcore group of individuals I've ever met, read about the Quakers. Quakers go into Ramallah in the late 19th century and say, we want to build a school, so they buy a bunch of land and they build a school. Today, that school is still there. It's the Friends School in Ramallah. While I was there, I ran Ultimate Practice, and the school stands as one of the strongest educational institutions in all of the West Bank. If you'd like to know more, I invite you to go to ultimatejosh.com, where I blogged extensively about my trip. A lot of information is there, video, photos, many more stories than I've had time to share today. If you'd like to live more, I'm excited to announce that I'm working on getting permission to bring Williston students next spring break to Israel for 2 weeks. The goal being to visit schools, fold origami, teach Ultimate, do community service, and see lots and lots of amazing sites that are interesting for many different reasons. The big pull that brought me to Israel and the West Bank in the first place were the students at Ultimate Peace. And 2 days ago, they capped off a U.S. tour by being in Chicago and actually made it onto Chicago National Television.
They may want to listen to some teens who belong to a group called Ultimate Peace.
Even the friendships that we have between us are fragile, they won't break, but they could bend. And we do something we should, then face the consequences.
Being friends also means that we have to get through the hard times.
삶이 더 스킨 가보시, 삶이 더 너무 속에 위에 가보시.
they have a story, and we have a story. And we can't say that they are wrong or we are wrong. What has been done is done. We can't change anything about past. So we should just live in prison and bring the peace.
We are the next generation, and we all have this responsibility. We are going to impact the future.
Ultimate Peace is an organization made up of teenagers from the Middle East who are building bridges of friendship and understanding among Arabs and Jews from Israel and the Palestinians, I should say, living in the West Bank. And they're doing it in a unique way through the character-building sport of Ultimate Frisbee. And joining us now from Ultimate Peace, thanks guys for being here. We have Asma Hijazi, who's from a Muslim Arab village in the north of Israel.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we have Jonathan Ben Haim from a Jewish town near Tel Aviv. Good to have you here. And Hassan Ayashi from a Muslim Arab village next to Tamra. So guys, thanks for being here. How long have you been in Chicago now?
2 days.
Just a couple of days. Okay, all right. So tell me a little bit, Jonathan, first of all, about the organization, how you got involved, and what your experience has been.
So the organization is an organization that tries to build bridges of friendship and understanding among Jews and Arabs. I got involved about 5 years ago, working to camp of the organization. I've been in the leadership program of the organization for 2 years now.
Got it. And Hassan, what's it been like for you?
I just get involved in the Ultimate Peace 2 years ago also. I think it's one of my greatest experiences in life. And we are such a great organization, and we're going one day to bring peace between people.
That's tremendous. And Hassan, maybe for folks who don't even know what Ultimate Frisbee is about, maybe you can tell us.
I'm getting the hook here, so I'm going to leave the rest of that clip for you to find on this website right there. Again, it's a proposed trip. Hopefully we'll get official approval in the next couple of weeks. So if you'd like to learn more, please go to jlem2015.com. Thank you.